Dr. Peter McCullough and Kim Witczak, thank you so much for joining me again at Moms on a Mission.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. McCullough, last month you spoke at the expert hearing in the European Union Parliament and clearly exposed the nefarious role of the WHO and how it appears to be operating within a biopharmaceutical complex as a syndicate that got in the way of doctors providing early treatment to patients battling COVID. You actually implored the European Medicine Agency to apply pressure to remove the COVID-19 injections from the market. For those who may not know, what data did you use to support your request?
The best summary statements calling for removal of the COVID-19 vaccines, and I've looked at them carefully as a practicing an internist and cardiologist because their observations are concordant with what I'm directly seeing in my practice. The two organizations are the World Council for Health in Bath, United Kingdom, and that announcement came out on June 11th, 2022. And the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons, their announcement came out in March of 2023. They both called for market removal of the vaccine. So these are, factual, established, evidence-based, consensus-driven organizations. And the reason why they called for removal of all COVID-19 vaccines off the market is because we are seeing record injuries, disabilities, and deaths as now documented in over 3,400 peer-reviewed papers.
That's outstanding. I just am really curious as to why, after 3 years, the WHO is still not acknowledging early intervention.
They are not. They're not. They've never acknowledged multi-drug early intervention. Neither has any other regulatory agency across the globe. We're talking early intervention for treatment of COVID-19, and none of them have recognized the dangers of COVID-19 vaccination. Those are two waves of injury that have hit the world's population.
So how do you think your message was received?
The video went viral, as you know, around the world, about a 16-minute speech. We do believe that WHO is at the head of this biopharmaceutical complex, this syndicate that is been carefully coordinated, orchestrated over time, probably centered out of Davos, Switzerland, World Economic Forum, WHO, UN, Rockefeller and Wellcome Trust Foundations, Gates Foundation, CEPI, Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation, founded by Gates Foundation and the WEF. The regulatory agencies, including our CDC, NIH, and FDA. I know Ms. Witczak has a tremendous experience with the FDA. She knows firsthand what can happen in terms of regulatory collusion. And then the pharmaceutical companies, they're in a sense suppliers to this complex. But the speech was so penetrating that within 2 weeks, my book, Courage to Face COVID-19, was censored off of Amazon. In an unprecedented move, Amazon, after 18 months of 5-star sales, best-selling book written by true crime author John Leake, they censored the book. They said it had offensive content. It didn't have a single curse word. It had nothing that came close to offensive content. So our book temporarily was among those from Adolf Hitler and others banned from Amazon. And then after 12 days and tremendous public pressure, it was restored. So I can tell you the European Parliament testimony hit a chord with this all-powerful biopharmaceutical complex.
Well, we appreciate your bravery in standing up like that. We absolutely need somebody sounding alarm and speaking facts and truth. Now, Kim, I would like to transition to you as a consumer safety representative on the FDA drug approval panel and a globally renowned advocate for pharmaceutical drug safety and FDA reform. Do you think the European Medicine Agency will respond to Dr. McCullough's request to pull the COVID-19 vaccines before the United States will?
Well, it's a really good question. From my experience, I've actually seen the EU and the EMA respond to safety issues before our FDA does. So my hope would be that the action comes from there, and eventually the pressure will happen on the FDA. If you look at the antidepressants, it was really the UK that actually put on the warnings and actually said that the antidepressants were not approved for children. And that was in 2000, around the time my husband died in 2003. So I believe it was the pressure that came out of the UK, as well as families that were pressuring the FDA to eventually put black box suicide warnings. Because as you know, the FDA, or may not know, the FDA first held hearings on antidepressants when it was just Prozac in the market in 1991 on the emergence of violence and suicide. And at that point, did nothing. And a lot of the advisory board members, a committee that I sit on today, had financial connections to the pharmaceutical companies. And at that time, the FDA said, Eli Lilly, study suicidality. They never did. The FDA never followed up. So my hope is, I wish it wasn't this way, but I hope that Dr. McCullough's speech at the Parliament actually does have impact and puts pressure on the EMA and the other European regulators to do something.
So, Kim, how would you compare the European Union's approach to drug safety compared to the United States? I know we've talked in the past about a fast track program. I believe that's a bit different.
Yeah. So in the U.S., we obviously have, it was basically after the AIDS crisis where, the public put a lot of pressure on the FDA saying that they were too slow at approving drugs and getting them on the market. So they put a lot of pressure into Congress, and that really was the start of something called PDUFA, Prescription Drug User Fee Act, which is basically the drug companies paying the FDA to approve their drugs. And since then, there are other regulatory that came out of Congress, such as breakthrough therapy, fast tracking, the EUA, or the EUA, emergency use authorization, which is really how these COVID jabs got put on the market as fast as they did with as little clinical trials as they do. So a lot of these fast tracking mechanisms that we have in place in the US have really come from pressure from, pharma. I mean, that's kind of the narrative, that it takes too long. And so everything is now in our country, we're seeing a lot of unmet needs. And anytime you hear unmet need, it means that, there's no current drug on the market that will that can work for that indication. So I believe that, even if there was a drug that was off label, that isn't technically FDA approved. So they can go under the unmet need and put pressure, which basically means less clinical trials and less safety standards are in place when these drugs come on market.
That's just incredible, because you have such a unique perspective with a marketing background and all the work you've done with SSRIs and that department. You have a unique perspective, the red flags. So I was just going to ask if you could share some of those red flags. I remember you said in an article that you noticed some similarities with the COVID injections coming down the pike, very similar to what you dealt with Woody's death regarding the SSRIs.
Sure. Well, when my husband died, of course, I had no background. So that's why I call myself the accidental advocate, because I had to put this all together. And I have eventually, I call it the spider web, because it's the influence that industry has had on it. Right. And then, I sit on, I've been doing this work, and I thought it was only a single issue of just an issue with antidepressants, but really it's how our drugs in the drug safety system. Right. And my background is advertising and marketing. So vaccines had never really been an area that I had gone deep into. I have other drugs, like Vioxx and some of the statins and some of those that were heavily advertised and more lifestyle type drugs, I call them. And then I learned things about how the devices come to market in our country. But vaccines weren't my issue because I didn't have kids until the COVID jabs came into market. I started noticing that it was, one of the first things was emergency use authorization. And because, again, using that as like there's nothing on the market that was going to help. And it was a one size fits all approach. Well, and we all know in medicine that our bodies are all different, right? That one size fits all doesn't work. And then I started listening to the message. It was like a single message across the world from everybody, from our regulators, our government officials, from celebrities. When I started seeing celebrities doing like social media, campaigns where they're getting a shot saying it's completely safe and effective, I was like, what? Like, what do they know? Like, I know what we do with brands. We use celebrities because we know they have power in getting people to, do or buy a product that we want them to do. Then the other one that was really an alarming one was a donut. All these sales promotion techniques, like a donut a day for a year if you brought in your COVID card, vaccine card, or a chance to win $1 million in a lottery, or get your school education paid for. Every kid, bring them in. Like there was something in the neighborhood in Minneapolis. If the kids in the community would get their jab, they would get a $200 Amazon card. Well, I mean, of course that's going to motivate, a 16-year-old, so all of this were seen to me as marketing techniques, not health. And the other thing that was a red flag is we didn't talk about ways to keep ourselves healthy. It was all about let's get an injection, a shot in every arm. So all of that. And then I think the final kind of straw for me, and, unlike Dr. McCullough, who's probably had a million epidemiology and all the courses in science, I just remember from my high school science classes, when you take away the placebo group, like it's not science. Like I thought we always had to have a placebo group. So you always had something to compare to. And that is part of the, a clinical trial. I'm sorry, if you're in the clinical trial and you happen to be the placebo participant, that is what a clinical trial is. And that's kind of what you sign up for. So all of those are red flags for me, and called and started paying attention to the whole vaccine program. And then also noticing that they have complete legal immunity for any future harms. Well, I know I was able to hold Pfizer accountable in my husband's death. And so I thought, what about all these people, this fast track rush? And what's going to happen when there's, as we see now, who's being able to be held accountable? Who's responsible? Those were some of my red flags. I could probably go on and on because I keep thinking of them, but there's so many red flags that I hope that people start paying attention to in any future pandemics that come our way.
Yeah, they keep referencing that we possibly will see some more. Dr. McCullough, I wanted to ask you, you appeared on Grant Stinchfield, Real America's Voice recently, and you referenced some data that showed direct cardiotoxicity of both Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines on heart muscle cells within 48 hours. This seemed to be new data.
It was a preclinical study by Streckenberg and colleagues published in European Journal of Pharmacology. And what they did is they took rat cardiomyocytes and they took Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, directly applied them. And the vaccines actually had separate effects on the cardiomyocytes. Pfizer caused various changes in the contractile apparatus of the heart muscle cell, as well as electrical depolarization of the membranes. Moderna, a different pattern, but both of them diseased patterns that looked very alarming, that would qualify as cardiotoxicity. So when a product goes through normal preclinical development, they actually do studies like this to see if a new drug is going to affect the heart. And if this study would have been done, back in 2019, 2020, in the development of the vaccines, it would have actually stopped production of the vaccines. We would have concluded, wait a minute, the vaccines are directly going to the heart. They're targeting heart muscle, and they're causing dysfunction of the cardiomyocytes within 48 hours.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if that was part of the plan. Do you know if that package insert for these injections is going to remain blank forever? Is there any information where they're talking about having a package insert like most normal medications have?
The original vaccines, the original Pfizer Moderna was called wild type Wuhan spike protein vaccines, now are off the market. They never were licensed. And then subsequently, the BA4, BA5 booster, which is now off the market, never got licensed. Now we're into XBB 1.5. Each one of these is quickly outdated because the virus keeps mutating. But no, the companies have never gone for full licensure. The original ones had biological licensing agreement letters if they did various cardiotoxicity and pregnancy studies. They never did. Now the new ones, the companies are not even trying. In fact, they have been waved forward for human use after studying them just in rodent models. So there's no human studies. So that should tell you right there, the entire regulatory process is completely off the rails. The companies have plenty of money and plenty of time to do human testing, and they're not doing it. They're simply using animal models, and the FDA is rubber stamping the emergency use authorization. The emergency use authorization when there's no emergency, because the President of the United States and HHS have closed the COVID-19 emergencies now about 6 months ago.
Seems like that would be illegal to use terminology that's not valid anymore.
It's true. You know, emergency use authorization is predicated on having both a national health emergency and then a public health emergency. And we have neither of those right now. And I can tell you it's reassuring. We've been watching this fall outbreak that was led by EG5 and FL 1.5. Now HV is moving in, but it's a very diverse outbreak. It's already rounded its peak and going down. So it was a very mild outbreak, genetically very diverse. People aren't taking the shots. October 4th, 2023, AP and Reuters reported only 1.3% of Americans are taking these untested, outdated XBB 1.5 boosters.
So maybe people are finally waking up and listening and realizing that this is not going to help them, but just hurt them. Dr. McCullough, you said in your presentation that there is not one study showing that the messenger RNA is broken down because it's synthetic, and they've found the spike protein after a month, but haven't even looked any further out than that. How can people get rid of this spike protein?
More disturbing data in just almost in a diabolical parody. Carrico and Weissman won the Nobel Prize for their modification of messenger RNA. Now, messenger RNA used as a therapy or a vaccine has over 9,000 patents associated with it. And the leading patent holders are Sanofi, CureVac, BioNTech, Moderna, and the US government. But so messenger RNA was not invented by a single person. Don't be fooled when someone comes out in 2021 and said, hey, I invented it. It doesn't work that way. This has been a very, very big project, many hands involved. But Carrico and Weissman were awarded the Nobel Prize for pseudouridination. That means they replaced every uracil, basically nucleic acid, with pseudouridine. That made the messenger RNA very efficient. It means it's used over and over again to produce spike protein endlessly. It's not broken down by human ribonucleases, as far as we know. Messenger RNA also has what's called nucleoside analog 3' and 5' caps at the end. Everything we can see right now, this messenger RNA is not broken down. Normally, messenger RNA is used in the body. It's used once, it's broken down immediately. We were disturbed when Castriuta and colleagues found messenger RNA circulating in the blood for a month. And then now Crossan and colleagues from Harvard showed messenger RNA stuck in the human heart for at least a month after the injection, associated with inflammation and death in people who've taken the vaccine. And then Rotkin and colleagues from Stanford showed messenger RNA in the lymph nodes of women undergoing lymph node biopsies for cancer suspicion in the breast. So this is disturbing. Now Brogna and colleagues from Germany have shown that the spike protein from the messenger RNA, which can be exactly identified, it's different spike protein than from the virus, is circulating in human blood for 6 months. And that's as long as they've looked. So people who have taken these shots need to know we do not have confidence that either the messenger RNA or the spike protein produced from it are cleared from the human body. We're probably going to need to take therapeutic steps to detoxify the body.
Which I wanted to talk to you about the wellness company you're connected with. How can folks get rid of this spike protein?
While this company has been an innovator, I advise the company as the chief scientific officer. Their lead product is called Spike Support. Spike Support is the principal ingredient is nattokinase. There's 5 minor ingredients that do play an important role. But the Spike Support, the nattokinase in the spike support does dissolve the spike protein. That's been shown in multiple preclinical studies. Now we have about a year of clinical use, and we are seeing people progressively get better in long COVID and post-vaccine injury syndromes. We don't have any funding for large-scale clinical trials. The Biden administration and HHS spent $1 billion on long COVID, and they didn't study nattokinase. They actually struck out. They didn't come up with a single new drug or protocol. So myself and Proctor and Cade Wynn, in a seminal publication in the Journal of American Physicians and Surgeons, as well as on the European Commission server, published McCullough protocol base spike protein detoxification. Now that includes nattokinase, which would be the wellness company Spike Support, or nattokinase obtained elsewhere, and then adding to it bromelain, another set of natural enzymes that dissolves the spike protein, then curcumin, which battles against spike protein inflammation, proven in randomized trials. So the natto and the bromelain are dissolving the spike protein, aiding the body in clearance, and the curcumin is actually improving symptoms. And this combination together, we're finding 3 to 12 months appears to support patients in their emergence from these syndromes. I can't make any therapeutic claims because there are no prospective large multi-drug randomized trials, but I've checked and there are none even planned at this point in time. So McCullough protocol-based spike protein detoxification is really a proposal, and we are amenable to change if governments or scientists can show useful additions or improvements upon it.
And there is one other interesting thing I thought was wonderful, and that is a medical kit that the wellness company provides. Could you explain that briefly?
Medical kits and innovation. The wellness company has a big doctors group, has health education resources, the nutraceuticals, supplements, community pharmacies, dentistry. But the kit's interesting, where the doctors have authorized this, where people can purchase a kit with instructions, like a survival kit for a next pandemic, for instance, or traveling overseas, and includes select antibiotics, antivirals, ways to basically defend against an unexpected infection. Multiple members of the biopharmaceutical complex, Anthony Fauci, who, by the way, is going to win an ethics award from Case Western University, just when he's close to indictment and under severe investigation from the House Committee for defrauding the country. You can't make this up, these perverse awards. But Anthony Fauci, vaccine frontman Peter Hotez, Tedros at the WHO, and Bill Gates of the Gates Foundation have all said there's going to be another pandemic. Papers are written about this. They said it probably will be another engineered virus from a biolab. If that's the case, we need to be ready. And the wellness company has delivered, in a sense, a survival kit that can help. And the doctors will be, with great alacrity, be ready to advise people on what to do. With COVID-19, we got caught by surprise, but we're not going to be surprised with the next one.
That's right. So we need to go to the wellness company, get that medical kit, and get these items that will help protect us and provide early intervention when this next pandemic comes down the pike. Also, I want to mention, and I know Dr. McCullough, you mentioned it, your book with John Lee, The Courage to Face COVID-19, Preventing Hospitalization and Death. And that has a lot of great information in it as well. So I encourage you, it's on Amazon now, and we believe it's going to stay now for a while. As long as Dr. McCullough doesn't share any other damaging information, they're not going to punish him, hopefully. So let's go get that book today. So Dr. Peter McCullough and Kim Witczak, thank you so much for joining me again today on Moms on a Mission. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Stay on your mission, moms.